He woke up before the alarm, the way he always did. Not because he wanted to, because his mind never fully rested anymore. The room was still dark, and the air felt cold around the edges of the blanket. He lay there for a moment and listened to the quiet. No traffic yet, no voices, just the soft hum of the fridge from the other room. Then he heard a small cough. That sound pulled him up faster than any alarm could. He got out of bed and walked carefully, stepping around the one squeaky floorboard he kept meaning to fix. In the small bedroom next to his child was curled up under a faded blanket, hair messy, face warm from sleep. The kid's breathing sounded normal. The cough stopped. Still, he stood there a few seconds, watching, making sure. He didn't have the luxury of ignoring little things. A small cough could turn into a missed school day, then a missed work day, then another late fee, another warning notice. His life had become a line of dominoes, and he was always trying to stop the next one from falling. He went to the kitchen and clicked on the light. The bulb flickered twice before it stayed on. He opened the fridge. Not much inside, but enough to make breakfast and pack a lunch. He took out eggs, a small carton of milk, and the last 2 slices of bread. While the pan warmed, he glanced at the notes on the table. He'd written them the night before in neat, careful letters, like neat handwriting could make the day go smoother. Interview at 10 o'clock. Bus at 8:15. School drop-off 8:50. Extra shirt for kid in case. Resume folder. Breath mints. He looked at the word interview and felt a tightness in his chest. This wasn't just any interview. It was the kind of job people called a real chance. Good pay, health coverage, a schedule that didn't change every week. Even the thought of a steady paycheck made his mind quiet for a second, like it couldn't believe it was possible. He cracked the eggs, stirred them, and kept his movements steady. He didn't want to rush and burn breakfast. He didn't want to start the day with smoke and stress. He had enough stress already. A few minutes later, small footsteps padded into the kitchen. His child appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Morning," he said gently, turning down his voice like the day was fragile. "Morning," the kid mumbled. He gave a small smile. "You hungry?" The kid nodded and climbed into the chair, swinging legs under the table. He put a plate down and added toast. Then he placed a cup of milk beside it. While the kid ate, he packed a lunch. A simple sandwich, an apple, and a snack pack he'd bought on sale. He tried to make it look nice anyway, like it was normal. Like the kid's lunch didn't come from careful counting. "You got spelling today, right?" he asked. The kid nodded again, mouth full. "You'll do fine," he said. "You always do." The kid looked up. "Are you going to your big meeting?" "It's an interview," he corrected softly. "Not a meeting." "Is it scary?" He paused. He didn't want to lie, but he didn't want fear to live in the kid's head either. "It's a little scary," he admitted, "but I'm ready." The kid stared at him with serious eyes, the kind kids sometimes have when they feel more than they can explain. "You're always ready," the kid said. That hit him harder than he expected. He turned away to put the lunch into the bag, blinking once and swallowing the tight feeling in his throat. After breakfast, he helped with shoes and jacket. He checked the backpack twice. Pencil case, homework folder, water bottle. He'd learned the hard way that forgetting one small item could turn into a call from school, which could turn into him having to leave early somewhere, which could turn into trouble. When the kid was finally ready, he grabbed his own folder with the resume copies. He'd printed them at the library 2 days ago, standing by the printer and praying it wouldn't jam. He checked his pockets, phone, wallet, keys. Then he looked at the mirror by the door. He didn't look like the men in those shiny job ads. His suit wasn't custom. The collar wasn't perfect. The shoes had been polished, but the leather was old. Still, he looked clean. He looked like someone who tried. He leaned closer and practiced a small smile. Not too big, not fake, just enough to look calm. Then he whispered to himself, "Steady." He didn't know where he'd first started saying that word, but it helped, like a hand on the shoulder. Outside, the morning air was sharp. He walked fast, but not so fast that his child had to run. He kept one hand near the kid's backpack strap, the way he always did, just in case. At the bus stop, other parents stood in small groups, half asleep, coffee cups in hand. Some nodded at him. Most didn't. He didn't take it personally. Everyone was living in their own storm. The bus came with a loud sigh, and they got on. He held onto the pole and looked down at his child, sitting by the window. The kid pressed her forehead against the glass and watched the city roll by. He used the ride to go through his answers in his head. Simple ones. Tell them about your experience. Explain why you left the last job. Talk about your strengths. Stay calm. Don't ramble. He had taken jobs wherever he could. Warehouse work, delivery routes, night shifts cleaning offices. Anything that let him keep the lights on and the kid fed. Some jobs ended because the contract ended. Some ended because the schedule changed and he couldn't find childcare. A few ended because he had to pick up his child from school when no one else could. He hated that he had to explain those gaps. He hated that being a responsible parent looked like weakness on paper. At school, he walked his child to the entrance and knelt down. "Listen," he said, keeping his voice warm. "After school, you go straight to the office and wait. I'll be there as fast as I can." The kid nodded. "If you're late, I'll wait." "I won't be late," he said quickly, then softened it. "I'll try my best." The kid reached out, touched his sleeve, and asked, "Do you want my lucky coin?" He blinked. "Your coin." The kid pulled a small coin from a pocket. It wasn't special in value, but it was special to the kid. A little treasure. He almost said no. He didn't want to take it, but he saw how serious the kid was, how much the kid needed to help in some way. So he held out his hand. "Okay, I'll keep it safe." The kid placed the coin in his palm and closed his fingers around it like it was a promise. Then the kid turned and ran inside without looking back. He stood there a moment, watching the door, feeling that familiar ache. Loving someone that much made everything heavier. It also made him keep going. He checked the time. He had to move. He headed back to the bus stop, took the next bus, then switched to the train. His interview folder stayed hugged against his chest like a shield. As the train rocked, he watched people around him. Some wore crisp suits, typing fast on their phones. Some had earbuds in and looked relaxed. He wondered what it felt like to go to an interview without thinking about school pickup, without worrying about a sick child, without calculating whether you could afford one mistake. He tried to focus on what he could control. His words, his attitude, his effort. When he arrived downtown, the buildings rose tall like they were made to remind people who had power. He walked along the sidewalk, weaving through crowds, keeping his eyes forward. The company building was bigger than he expected. Glass walls, clean lines, a fancy lobby with a front desk that looked like a piece of art. People moved through it like they belonged there. He paused outside the doors and took one deep breath. "Steady," he whispered again. Then he walked inside. The lobby smelled like fresh coffee and expensive air freshener. The floor shined under bright lights. His footsteps sounded too loud, like the building could hear him and was judging. At the desk, he gave his name. The receptionist smiled politely, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "One moment," she said. He stood to the side, holding his folder. He looked at the people passing by. Some didn't glance at him. Others did, briefly, the way people look at someone who seems a little out of place. He checked his phone. No new messages from school. Good. He slipped the lucky coin out of his pocket and rubbed it between his fingers. It was warm from his hand. A few minutes later, he was given a visitor badge and told to take the elevator to the upper floors. Inside the elevator, his reflection stared back at him in the mirrored wall. He tried to relax his shoulders, tried to smooth his tie. The doors opened. A quiet hallway, soft carpet, a few framed awards on the wall, the kind of awards that said the company was successful and proud of it. A person in a sharp outfit led him to a waiting area, a glass room with chairs and a table. A bowl of candy sat in the middle like decoration. He sat down and placed a folder on his lap. His knee bounced once, then he forced it still. In the waiting area, 2 other candidates sat across from him. They looked confident, almost bored. One of them laughed at something on a phone screen. The other checked a watch and rolled shoulders, like warming up for a game. He kept his eyes down. He didn't want to compare. Comparing would only steal energy. He pulled his resume out, not because he needed to read it, but because holding paper made his hands feel less shaky. He reviewed the bullet points as if he was meeting himself for the first time. Hard worker, reliable, team player, problem solver. He almost laughed, quietly, at how simple those words were, how heavy they felt in real life. A door opened, and a staff member stepped out and called his name. He stood quickly, too quickly, and adjusted his jacket. "This way," the staff member said. He followed, walking through a hallway that felt too quiet, too clean. His ears picked up every small sound. The soft tap of his shoes, the faint hum of air vents, the distant murmur of voices behind closed doors. They stopped at a conference room. "Just go in," the staff member said, and left. He placed his hand on the door handle. It was cool and smooth. He felt sweat on his palm. He thought of his child at school, sitting in class, believing in him. He thought of the rent notice folded in his drawer at home. He thought of the fridge, with too much empty space. He inhaled slowly. Then he opened the door and stepped inside. 3 people sat on the other side of the table. 2 looked like hiring managers. 1 looked different, more calm, more focused, dressed simply but in a way that still felt expensive. Not flashy, just sure. A laptop was open in front of that person. A pen rested beside it. The eyes lifted and studied him in a way that didn't feel rude, just sharp, like the person could see more than just a suit and a resume. He swallowed and walked forward. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," one of them replied, already sounding tired. He sat down, placed his folder on the table, and tried to keep his hands still. They began with simple questions. Background, work history, why this company? He answered carefully, choosing honest words, trying to keep the story clean and professional. But he could feel the room's mood. The 2 managers seemed to be listening with half their attention. One glanced at the time once. The other nodded too fast, like checking boxes. Only the calm one watched him closely. Not just his words, but the way he held himself. Then the questions got harder. A technical question came up. A scenario he hadn't expected. He tried to answer. He started strong. Then his mind hiccuped. He corrected himself. He tried again. His voice grew thinner. The silence that followed felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He forced a small smile, trying to recover. "If you give me a moment, I can walk through it again." One of the managers sighed slightly, like the moment was already lost. His chest tightened. His thoughts scattered. He could feel himself slipping, like trying to climb while the ground crumbled under his feet. He answered another question, but the rhythm was gone. He knew it. The room knew it. The kind of knowing that settles in quietly and ruins your hope without making noise. He kept going anyway, because quitting in the middle would feel worse. Finally, the manager thanked him and said, "We'll be in touch." He recognized that line. Everyone used it. It usually meant no. He stood up, shook hands, and said thank you like he wasn't breaking inside. As he walked out, he held his head high. He didn't want anyone in the hallway to see defeat on his face. But the moment the elevator doors closed, his shoulders dropped like he'd been carrying a heavy bag for too long. He stared at his own reflection again, and this time he didn't try to smile. By the time he reached the lobby, he was numb. He handed back the visitor badge and stepped out onto the sidewalk. Cold air hit him, and his eyes stung. He didn't check his phone. He didn't wait around for some miracle. He just started walking away from the building, faster and faster, like he could outrun the feeling. In his pocket, the lucky coin pressed against his fingers. He held it tight, not as a charm anymore, but as something to keep him grounded. Behind him, high above the street, on one of the upper floors, a door opened again. Voices rose, quick and urgent, as if someone had just made an unexpected decision. And out on the sidewalk, the single dad kept walking, believing the day was already over, not knowing that someone inside that building had been watching him in a very different way. He didn't know where he was going at first. He just walked. The wind cut through his jacket, but he barely felt it. His head was loud, like a room full of people talking at once. Every few steps, the interview replayed in his mind. The question he missed. The pause that felt too long. The small sigh from the manager. The way the tired smile at the end didn't mean anything. He kept his face neutral because people were passing him, and he didn't want anyone to see what was happening inside him. He hated that feeling, like he was carrying something heavy and everyone else was just moving around without a problem. He crossed one street, then another. Cars rushed by. A bus hissed at the curb. A group of office workers spilled out of a cafe, laughing about something small and easy. He looked down at his hand and realized he'd been rubbing the lucky coin in his pocket so hard his fingers hurt. He stopped and loosened his grip, then closed his hand again, gentler this time. "It's fine," he whispered to himself, like the words could fix the tightness in his throat. "It's fine." But it didn't feel fine. He checked the time. Still early. Too early to go pick up his child. Too early to go home and sit in that small apartment with nothing to do but worry. He pulled out his phone and stared at the screen. No messages. No missed calls. He was glad for that. The only thing worse than failing an interview was failing it, and then getting a call from school right after. He started walking again, slower now. He tried to breathe in a steady way, like he was calming down after running. His stomach was empty, but he didn't feel hungry. He felt like the air had turned into a knot inside him. As he walked, he began doing what he always did when something went wrong. He started planning the next move, even though he didn't want to. Okay, he thought, that job is gone. So what now? He could apply to 10 more jobs. He could call the temp agency again, even though they'd been checking for 2 weeks. He could ask his old supervisor if anything had opened up, even though he'd already asked last month and got a polite no. He could take night shifts again, but then who would watch his child? Each option felt like a wall. He reached a small park and sat on a bench, the kind with chipped paint and a cold metal back. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, and stared at the ground. He wasn't the kind of person who gave up easily. He couldn't afford to. But this felt different. It wasn't just disappointment. It was that tired feeling of trying and still falling short. He thought about the rent notice in the drawer. He thought about the grocery list at home, with items crossed out because they cost too much. He thought about the kid asking last week if they could go to the movies like their friend did. He had laughed and said, "Maybe soon." He hated maybe soon. It was the kind of promise that kept stretching like a rubber band until it snapped. He sat there long enough that his legs started to feel stiff. Then he stood up, because sitting still made the thoughts worse. He walked toward the train station, not because he had a plan, but because moving kept him from sinking. On the ride back, he watched the reflection of his own face in the window. He looked older than he remembered, not because of age, but because of pressure. His eyes looked like they were always scanning for problems, always preparing for the next hard thing. A man across from him was reading a magazine about travel. A couple nearby talked about brunch. He tried not to compare, but it happened anyway. When he got off downtown again, without meaning to, he realized he'd circled back close to the same building. He stopped on the sidewalk and looked up at the glass tower. He didn't know why his feet brought him there. Maybe his mind wanted to go back and fix it, like the day could rewind if he stared hard enough. He shook his head and turned away. Just then, inside the building, the conference room door had closed, but the air in that room didn't feel calm. One manager leaned back and said, "Okay, next candidate." The other one was already flipping pages, ready to move on. But the calm person at the end of the table, the one who watched more than they spoke, didn't move right away. Their eyes stayed on the door of the single dad had walked through. He didn't answer that scenario well, the tired manager said. He froze. "People freeze when they're scared," the calm person replied, voice even. "It doesn't mean they can't do the work." The manager gave a small shrug, like it was pointless to argue. "We need someone sharp from day one." "We need someone steady," the calm person said. "There's a difference." A quiet beat passed. The calm person reached for the resume again, the one that had been placed at the bottom of the pile, like it was done. Fingers tapped the paper, not impatiently, more like thinking. "Read this again," the calm person said. The manager frowned. "We already did." "Read it again," the calm person repeated, firmer this time. The manager obeyed, scanning the lines. Work history, skills, references, gaps. "There," the manager said, tapping a section. "There's the problem. Gaps. Short jobs. Inconsistent." The calm person leaned forward. Or it's a person who took what he could, when he could, because he had to, and still kept going. The second manager sighed. "We can't hire people based on a sad story. It isn't a sad story, the calm person said. It's a responsibility story. The room stayed quiet. The calm person didn't raise their voice. They didn't need to. The tone alone made the two managers sit straighter. Did either of you ask about his schedule? The calm person asked. We asked availability. One of them answered. He said he has a kid. It's limited. And you heard limited and stopped listening. The calm person replied. The manager's face tightened. We have standards. So do I, the calm person said. And I don't want a company that only works for people with perfect lives. That landed like a stone in water. The managers didn't know what to say because the calm person wasn't just a senior interviewer. This was the person who owned the building, the person whose name sat on the walls without being printed, the person who could change the room just by sitting in it. The CEO looked at the assistant standing near the door. Where did he go? The assistant blinked. Who? The candidate, the CEO said. The single dad. One manager looked confused. He left. I know he left, the CEO replied. Find him. The assistant hesitated. Find him how? The CEO stood up, calm but quick. He would have gone to the elevator, then down to the lobby. He likely walked out the front doors. Go. The assistant moved instantly. When someone like that spoke, people didn't ask why. They just moved. The two managers stared. Are we reconsidering him? One asked. The CEO slipped a resume into a hand. We are not discarding him that fast. But he failed the question, the manager said, trying to sound firm. The CEO looked at the manager, eyes sharp. He failed a question. He did not fail as a person. Then, without another word, the CEO walked out of the conference room. The assistant hurried down the hallway, shoes tapping softly on carpet. In the elevator, the assistant pressed the lobby button twice like it would arrive faster. Downstairs, the receptionist looked up as the assistant rushed over. Did a candidate just leave? The assistant asked. The receptionist nodded. Yes, about 5 minutes ago. Which direction? The receptionist pointed through the glass doors. He walked that way. The assistant pushed open the doors and stepped outside, scanning left and right. People everywhere. Coats, bags, phones, coffee cups. The city didn't slow down for anyone. The assistant spotted him in the distance. A man walking like he had something heavy on his back. Head down, shoulders tight. The assistant turned and saw the CEO coming out now too. Not strolling, not posing, just moving with purpose. The sight was strange. Most people in that building had only seen the CEO in photos or on stage, not on a sidewalk. The CEO didn't pause to fix a code or check a phone. The CEO simply headed after him. Outside, the single dad didn't notice at first. He was too busy trying to hold himself together. He kept telling himself he should go home and act normal when he picked up his child. He should not let the kid see the disappointment. But then he heard footsteps behind him. Fast, steady steps. He stopped walking without thinking. His body froze like it did in the interview. Only this time it wasn't a question. It was confusion. The CEO closed the distance quickly and raised a hand. Not in a wave. More like asking for a moment. Wait, the CEO called out, voice clear but not loud. People around them slowed to look. Some stepped aside. Someone turned their head and recognized the CEO, then whispered to a friend. The single dad felt his face heat up. Suddenly, he was aware of everything. His old shoes, his plain coat, the fact that he was standing there like he didn't belong. The CEO stopped a few feet away, breathing a little faster from walking quickly. I'm sorry, the CEO said. Those two words shocked him more than anything else. He blinked. Sorry. Yes, the CEO replied. For how that ended. The single dad swallowed. His first thought was fear. Did he do something wrong? Did he say something that offended them? Did someone think he lied on his resume? He took a half step back. I didn't mean to waste your time, he said quickly. I know I messed up the question. The CEO lifted a hand again, gentle this time. You didn't waste my time. The single dad's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't know what to do with kindness in a moment like this. He was used to polite rejection. He was used to "we'll call you." He was used to doors shutting. The CEO looked at him carefully, like the CEO was seeing more than just a candidate who stumbled. You walked out with your head up, the CEO said, even though it didn't go your way. The single dad let out a small breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He looked down at the sidewalk. I've had worse days, he said, trying to sound casual. The CEO nodded once. That's exactly what worries me. People shouldn't have to get used to worse days. The single dad's throat tightened again, and he didn't like it. He hated feeling emotional in public. He hated feeling seen. He forced a small laugh that didn't sound right. It's okay. I'll just keep applying. The CEO glanced at the assistant, then back at him. Before you keep applying, I'd like to ask you something. The single dad looked up. What? The CEO spoke slowly, like choosing words carefully. If you had a chance to talk again, without the pressure of that room, would you take it? He stared, trying to understand. Talk again, he repeated. You mean another interview? The CEO shook their head slightly. Not like that. Not the same setup. Not the same kind of questions. A real talk. The single dad felt his chest tighten in a different way now. Not pain, something closer to hope. And hope scared him. He glanced around. People were still walking past, still glancing at them. He felt exposed. Like this moment was too public, too strange. He cleared his throat. I don't want special treatment, he said. The CEO's eye stayed steady. I'm not offering special treatment. I'm offering a second look. The single dad's hand slipped into his pocket and touched the coin. He rolled it between his fingers again. A second look. He thought of his kid's serious face that morning. He thought of the little voice saying, "You're always ready." He wanted to say yes. He also wanted to protect himself from getting hurt again. The CEO waited without pushing. No rushing. No sighing. Just waiting like the answer mattered. The single dad finally nodded once, small and careful. Okay, he said. I'll talk. The CEO's shoulders relaxed, just a little. Good. Then the CEO turned slightly, gesturing back toward the building. Come inside. We'll find a quieter place. The single dad hesitated for a second, then followed. As they walked back through the doors, he felt like he was stepping into another world again. Only this time it wasn't because he was trying to impress anyone. It was because someone had decided he was worth catching before he disappeared into the crowd. They walked back into the lobby together, and the change in the air was immediate. A moment ago, he had been just another person leaving a building. Now, people were noticing, not in a loud way, but in that quick, careful way. Eyes lifting, then dropping, like they weren't sure what they were allowed to look at. He hated it. He kept his shoulders tight as they moved past the front desk. The receptionist's polite smile returned, but it looked different now. More alert, almost nervous. The single dad felt his face warm again. He wanted to disappear into the floor. The CEO didn't rush him, didn't make a show of it, just spoke quietly to the assistant. Find us a small room, the CEO said. Not the conference room. The assistant nodded and walked ahead. The single dad followed a few steps behind. His hand stayed in his jacket pockets, fingers holding the coin, like it was the only solid thing in the world. He cleared his throat. I'm sorry, he said, voice low. The CEO glanced at him. For what? For being a mess out there, he said. I didn't expect any of this. The CEO's expression didn't change much, but the tone softened. You weren't a mess. You were human. That word hit him. Human. Like it was something people forgot to allow. They reached an elevator. The assistant held the door open. The CEO stepped in, then the single dad. The doors closed, and the small space felt too quiet. He stared at the floor numbers lighting up. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat. He tried to steady his breathing the way he taught his child during thunderstorms. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The CEO watched him for a second, then looked away, giving him space. That small act, looking away, felt like kindness. Like the CEO understood that being stared at made him feel cornered. When the elevator opened, they stepped into a calmer hallway than before. This floor felt less busy, less shiny. The carpet was still clean, but the walls weren't covered with awards. It felt like a place where real work happened. The assistant opened a door to a small office with a round table and 2 chairs. No big screen, no long table, no lineup of serious faces. Water, the assistant asked. The CEO nodded. Please. The single dad shook his head automatically, then changed his mind. Actually, yes, if it's okay. The assistant left and closed the door gently behind him. Now it was just the two of them. The CEO pulled out a chair, not for himself, but for the single dad first. That made him pause. He wasn't used to anyone doing that for him in a professional setting. Sit, the CEO said, simple and calm. He sat slowly, setting his folder on the table like it might make things feel normal. His fingers stayed near the edge of the folder, as if he might need to grab it and run. The CEO sat across from him, elbows resting lightly on the table, hands open. No laptop, no pen tapping, no checking the time. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The silence wasn't the bad kind, though. It didn't feel like judgment. It felt like the CEO was giving him time to breathe. Finally, the CEO spoke. I want to be clear. I didn't run after you to embarrass you. He let out a quiet breath. It was embarrassing anyway. The CEO nodded once. I can understand that, but I didn't want you walking away thinking you were worthless. He stared at the CEO, unsure how to respond. Worthless was a strong word, but it was also the word that had been sitting in his chest since the interview ended. The CEO leaned back a little. Most people in that room belong there because they've had practice, not because they're better. He swallowed. He didn't know why that made him want to cry, but it did. Maybe because it sounded like the truth. Maybe because no one had said it to him before. The CEO continued. Tell me what happened in there. Not the polished version, the real version. He hesitated. Old habits kicked in. He wanted to perform. He wanted to sound strong. But something about the CEO's tone made pretending feel pointless. The real version, he repeated. Yes, the CEO said. Start wherever you want. He rubbed the coin through his pocket one last time, then pulled his hand out and placed the coin on the table. It looked small and ordinary under the bright light. My kid gave me that this morning, he said, surprising himself. The CEO glanced at the coin, then back at him. Lucky coin. He gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, they think it helps. I think it does, the CEO said. The single dad stared at the coin as he spoke. I came in trying to be ready. I practiced answers on the bus. I read about the company at night after my kid fell asleep. But when you asked that scenario question, my mind went blank. He looked up, meeting the CEO's eyes for a moment. And once I blanked, I could feel it. The room changed. Like I was already done. The CEO's face remained calm, but the eyes sharpened slightly. You felt dismissed. He nodded. Yeah. The CEO didn't argue with him. Didn't say. I'm sure they didn't mean it. Just nodded again like it was a fact worth accepting. The door opened softly, and the assistant returned with 2 cups of water. The assistant set them down and stepped out again without lingering, closing the door behind. The CEO slid 1 cup toward him. Drink. He took a sip. The water was cold enough to wake him up a little. The CEO asked, What's your situation at home? And I'm not asking to be nosy. I'm asking because it affects what support you need to succeed. That question made his shoulders tense again. He had learned that when employers asked about situation, it often meant they were about to decide he was too complicated. Still, the CEO had chased him down. That had to mean something. He chose his words carefully. It's just me and my kid. How old? The CEO asked. Still small, he said, not wanting to get too specific. School age. And the other parent? The CEO asked, gentle, not pushing. He swallowed. Not in the picture. The CEO nodded once, as if to say, understood. He continued, So if school calls, it's me. If there's a day off, it's me. If childcare cancels, it's me. I work around that. The CEO asked, Do you have family nearby? He almost laughed. Not really. The CEO's gaze stayed steady. Then you're doing the work of 2 people. He didn't answer. His throat tightened again. The CEO leaned forward a little. That doesn't make you less hireable. It makes you someone who understands responsibility. He looked away. The room felt too bright. I'm tired, he admitted quietly. I try not to show it, but I'm tired. The CEO didn't respond with pity. Just a simple, honest line. I can see that. A pause. Then the CEO asked, Let's talk about your strengths. Not what's on the resume. What do you know you can do well? He blinked. He wasn't used to that question being asked like that. Usually it was a trap to see how well he could sell himself. This felt different, like the CEO actually wanted to know. He thought for a moment. I'm good at showing up, he said. Even when things are hard. I don't disappear. The CEO nodded. That matters. He continued, a little more confident now. I learn fast when someone shows me once. I don't need fancy instructions. I just need someone to tell me what good looks like, and I'll hit it. The CEO asked, and when something goes wrong? He answered quickly, because this one he knew. I don't panic. I fix it. I've had too many situations at home where panicking doesn't help. You just handle it. The CEO's mouth lifted slightly. Not a smile exactly, but something close. That's a useful skill in business, too. He found himself sitting up straighter. The CEO tapped the resume folder lightly, not accusing, just referencing it. Your work history is a lot of short periods. He flinched, expecting the usual lecture, but the CEO said, Tell me what's behind that. He let out a breath. A lot of those jobs were contract, or hours changed, or my kid got sick, and I had to miss days. And once you miss days, people decide you're a problem. The CEO said, So you were pushed out? Sometimes, he admitted. Sometimes I left before they could push. I could tell when they were done with me. The CEO's eyes narrowed just a bit. Like today. He didn't answer, but the silence said yes. The CEO leaned back again. I'm going to ask you something direct. He felt his stomach drop. Okay. If I offered you a chance to prove yourself here, an actual chance, not a performance, what would you need to make it work? That question didn't feel like a trick. It felt like someone finally asking the right thing. He thought carefully. I need a schedule I can trust, he said. Not one that changes last minute. I can work hard. I can stay late sometimes with notice. But I can't do random, surprise shifts. I can't drop my kid. The CEO nodded. Fair, he added. And I need to know I won't be punished for being a parent. I'm not asking for special treatment. I just don't want to be treated like I'm unreliable when I'm doing what any parent should do. The CEO was quiet for a moment. Then the CEO said something that surprised him. We have people in this company who miss deadlines because they don't care. And we have people who miss deadlines because their life collapses for a day. Those two things are not the same. He felt something loosen in his chest, like a knot slowly untied. The CEO continued, but our hiring process treats them like the same person. He stared at the CEO now fully. Why are you telling me this? The CEO's eyes held his. Because I'm responsible for the culture here, and I don't like what I saw in that room. He didn't know what to say. The CEO's words weren't dramatic. They weren't loud, but they felt heavy, like a door opening. The CEO looked at him and asked, Would you be willing to do something simple? Not an interview. A working trial. A short one. You do real tasks with a small team. We watch how you work. You watch how we work. If it fits, we move forward. If not, we don't waste each other's time. His heart beat faster. A trial, he repeated. Yes, the CEO said. 2 weeks. Paid. Clear hours. Clear expectations. He almost didn't believe the word paid. Too many trial offers he'd heard about were unpaid or vague or shady. This sounded structured, real. He searched the CEO's face for signs of a joke, a trick, a catch. He found none. His voice came out rough. Why me? The CEO didn't answer with a speech. Just the plain truth. Because you walked out of that room with dignity, the CEO said. And because you didn't blame anyone. You didn't beg. You didn't get angry. You simply took the hit and kept moving. That tells me who you are under pressure. He swallowed hard. He thought of all the times he'd swallowed pride just to keep things stable for his kid. He thought of holding it together in grocery store lines, in school offices, in late-night bus rides. He looked down at the coin again. The CEO added, Also, you were not as wrong on that scenario as they made it seem. You were nervous, but your thinking was there. I could see it. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for years. I want to do it, he said. The CEO nodded. Good. Then the CEO asked, "Can you start Monday?" He blinked. Monday. It was only a few days away. His mind immediately went to childcare, school hours, after-school pickup, the thin line of his routine. "I need to arrange after-school care," he said carefully. "I can do mornings and school hours no problem, but pickup time is—" The CEO raised a hand slightly. "Tell me your pickup time." He told the time. The CEO nodded and said, "Then your day ends before that time. If the job can't respect that, it doesn't deserve you." He stared, shocked again. The CEO reached into a pocket and pulled out a simple business card, sliding it across the table. "Here's my direct office line," the CEO said, "and here's the HR person I trust. You won't be dealing with the people who dismissed you today." His fingers hovered above the card before taking it. He had never held something like that in his life. A direct line. Access. Proof that this wasn't just a polite moment. He picked up the card with careful fingers, as if it might disappear. The CEO stood, signaling the talk was ending. "Take the weekend. Handle your life. Show up Monday if you want this." He stood too, still stunned. "I do," he said, more certain now. "I want it." The CEO nodded, then glanced at the coin on the table. "Don't forget that." He smiled, a real one this time, small but honest. He picked up the coin and closed his hand around it. As they walked out of the small office, the hallway didn't feel as cold as before. The building still looked expensive, still looked like a world he didn't belong in. But now, for the first time, it felt like a door had opened just enough for him to step through. And as they reached the elevator, he realized something that made his eyes sting again. He hadn't been chased down because someone felt sorry for him. He'd been chased down because someone finally saw him. Monday came fast. All weekend, he tried to act normal for his child. He still made breakfast, still checked homework, still laughed at small jokes. But his mind kept drifting back to that card in his wallet and the coin in his pocket. He'd take them out when the kid wasn't looking, just to make sure they were real. At night, after the kid fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and wrote down questions. Not fancy ones, just the kind a person writes when they finally get a chance and don't want to mess it up. What exactly will I be doing? Who do I report to? What does good work look like here? What happens if school calls? How do I make sure I don't fall behind? He also wrote down one more line at the bottom, then stared at it for a long time. Don't get your hopes too high. He hated that line, but it had protected him before. Sunday night, he laid out his clothes. Clean shirt, the same suit jacket, shoes polished again. He checked his bus route twice and set 2 alarms. Then he lay in bed and listened to the quiet, heart thumping like he was about to take an exam. When morning came, the kid was already awake, sitting on the couch with a blanket around their shoulders. "You look like you're going somewhere," the kid said. "I am," he answered, keeping his voice steady. "Remember that place? The big building." The kid's eyes widened. "Did they call you back?" He paused, then chose the simplest truth. "They asked me to try again. Not like the first time. A different way." The kid sat up straight. "So you didn't lose?" He smiled. "Not yet." The kid hopped off the couch and ran into the bedroom, coming back with the backpack already on, like they were both starting something new. On the way to school, the kid talked more than usual. About a class project, about a friend who brought cupcakes, about how the school hallway smelled like markers. He listened, but a part of him was counting minutes. Not in a stressed way this time, more like he wanted everything to stay on track. He didn't want any surprise today. At the school doors, the kid looked up at him and said, "Do you still have the coin?" He opened his palm. The coin sat there, plain and small. The kid nodded, satisfied. "Good. Keep it. Until you get the job." He closed his fingers around it. "Deal." After the kid ran inside, he stood in the doorway for a moment. He didn't rush away like he usually did. He watched his child disappear into the building. Then he breathed in slowly. This was still scary, but it wasn't the same kind of scary as last time. He got to the office building early again, but today the lobby felt different. Not because the marble floors changed or the lights got warmer. It felt different because he didn't feel like he was sneaking in. The receptionist greeted him quickly this time, like she'd been told to expect him. A badge was waiting. No long pause, no bored smile. An HR person came down to meet him. Someone with a calm face and a simple outfit, not overly polished. The kind of person who looked like they listened more than they judged. "Thanks for coming in," the HR person said. "We're going to do a 2-week working trial, just like the CEO explained. You'll be with a small team. They'll show you what you need. You'll do real work, and we'll check in as we go." He nodded. "Okay. Any questions before we start?" the HR person asked. He wanted to ask 100, but he started with the one that mattered most. "My child's pickup time," he said quietly. "I can't miss that." The HR person didn't blink. "We've already set your hours around it. You'll leave early enough. If anyone gives you trouble, you come to me." That sentence alone made his shoulders drop a little, like he'd been bracing for impact and didn't have to. They took the elevator up to a floor that looked busy, but not chaotic. People moved with purpose, but no one looked angry. Screens glowed. Phones rang. A few people laughed near a coffee machine. The HR person led him to a desk near the corner. Not hidden, not shoved in the back. Just a desk. "This is yours during the trial," the HR person said. "Computer login is here. If you need anything adjusted, let us know." He swallowed. "Thank you." A team lead came over, someone about his age, friendly but focused. "Morning," the team lead said. "You ready to jump in?" "I think so," he answered honestly. The team lead smiled like that was a good answer. "That's fine. We'll start simple." The first day was not glamorous. It wasn't speeches and handshakes. It was instructions, passwords, a quick tour of the systems, where the bathroom was, how to submit a request, how to ask for help without waiting too long. He liked that it was real. They gave him small tasks at first, organizing files, reviewing basic reports, checking details, the kind of work that showed whether someone was careful. He was careful. He didn't rush. He read instructions twice. He asked questions when something wasn't clear. He wrote notes the way he wrote notes at home, because he couldn't afford to forget things. By lunch, he realized something strange. Nobody was looking down at him. People walked by and said hello. One person offered him an extra snack from a desk drawer. Another pointed out where to get cheap coffee nearby.